Hi, Jennifer here. I'm just popping in to let you know we're wrapping up the Better Women series and we'll be bringing you the fifth and final episode early 2026. As we close out the year, we're dropping this special episode produced in collaboration with our friends at the Child Bright Research Network. Have a listen to the energy and insights of youth with lived experience who inherently bring an advocacy lens to their research work. Hope you enjoy the episode, and we wish a heartfelt happy holidays to all our listeners from Emily and me. You're listening to Matters of Engagement, a podcast examining issues at the intersection of health, healthcare, and society. I'm Jennifer Johannesson.
And I'm Emily Nicholas Angle.
This is a special episode produced in collaboration with Child Bright, a pan-Canadian patient-oriented research network based at the Research Institute of the McGill University Health Centre. Created in 2016, it works to create brighter futures for children and youth with brain-based developmental disabilities and their families.
Child Bright works to get proven treatments and support into the hands of families dealing with brain-based developmental disabilities. They share knowledge through podcasts, like this one, videos, and community outreach, while making sure the voices of people with lived experience are heard in research and decision-making.
The Research Network focuses on building real relationships with diverse communities and training teams to implement changes that actually stick. Their goal is to bridge the gap between what research shows works and what families can actually access in their daily lives.
With these objectives in mind, Child Bright involves young people with disabilities in their research projects to help them select and steer priorities. Now, if you've listened to any of our previous Matters of Engagement episodes, you'll know that involving people with lived experience can be a complex topic and can be difficult for organizations to navigate. That can be especially true when young people are involved, because, honestly, they're way more inclined to tell it like it is.
In this episode, we're basically turning the mic over to 2 youth advisors and 1 student researcher. All 3 have been involved in Child Bright projects and initiatives. We wanted their perspective on what they feel they're bringing to their work with Child Bright and beyond.
Our 3 guests are Kelsey Sega, Sierra Lynn Vanderdeen, and Megan Blaise Hudson. We recorded these interviews in mid-2024. At the time, Kelsey and Sierra were members of the National Youth Advisory Council at Child Bright. Not research participants, but rather advisors and advocates, shaping the research itself. And Megan was a student researcher involved in Child Bright's equity, diversity, and inclusion work.
Yep, and they're all continuing on with their advocacy work and studies. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up with them again soon.
Okay, to get us rolling, let's start with Kelsey, who explains what makes this approach important.
One of the biggest things for Child Bright is that it gives youth with lived experience the chance to advocate for what they believe is important for them. And often youth voices tend to be overshadowed or excluded when it comes to research.
For Sierra, this role represents something they hadn't found elsewhere. A space where their advocacy could have real impact.
This is my first step in what I'd say is my consultancy career and learning how to advocate for what I believe in and what I know will help other people like myself. And being able to legitimize something like this for myself is really great because now I know that, say, when I'm sharing what I think autistic people deserve in the workplace, for example, it's not falling on deaf ears. It's not like I'm writing the comments on Twitter and it just falls into the void or whatever. Like, in this sense, I'm saying it exactly to the people who need to hear it and also get compensated for it.
Each of our guests brings different expertise and perspectives to their work. Megan's involvement spans several projects.
So I came to Child Bright as a summer student. So I'm pursuing my bachelor's in First People Studies, and I'm super interested in policy, not only relating to First Peoples, but just policy in general, but also into research. So I just kind of came on board through that lens and aspect. And I've been working on a few projects, one relating to prenatal opioid exposure, I'm also on the EDI-DI, like I'm working on a project with them, which is the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, Decolonization, and Indigenization Board. So I'm working on a presentation about Indigenous data sovereignty. And then I'm also working a little bit on the Joy app, trying to find activities in the territories and specifically for First Nations youth with disabilities in Canada to be able to add to that database.
Sierra wasn't certain that having a background in social media would be sufficient for becoming involved in ChildBright, given its focus on medical research.
My background is in social media and not, say, in like the medical field. So a lot of the world around research and the terminology there, I'm still getting the hang of that. I got started in different organizations with autism, and really it was like getting to make friends with other autistic peers like myself, and then also do a little bit of activism here and there. I had never been offered a part like that before. So it was all a little unfamiliar for me at first. What I can do well is write and advocate for other autistic people like myself. So I'm really glad to actually get like an official role to do that and be able to really get down to the core of what autistic people struggle with, whether it's socially, mentally, or societally, or culturally. So being able to help with that and actually be involved in that sense is really gratifying for me.
Kelsey's journey began through academic research on fatherhood and cerebral palsy, which led to the discovery of ChildBright through related Facebook groups.
I'm part of a few Facebook groups for families of children with CP since my master's degree research focused on looking at fatherhood experiences and raising children with cerebral palsy. So I ended up finding ChildBright by chance. I emailed saying I was interested if there was any positions, and then I met with Sharon, and she said with my lived experience and my academic background that I would be a great fit. So I've been here since March 2023, so about a year and a half now. I would say I'm a good fit, especially since a lot of my background is research oriented. I was part of a child development lab during my undergrad, so I had experience with that. I do think, as I've always been someone who wanted to advocate for my experiences and sharing my experiences, I think this consultant, if you want to call it position, does help me do that part in helping others. And I think it's also important that because of the research aspect, I've been a part of helping, look over research protocols and whatnot. So I think it's been a good fit.
So each of our guests joined ChildBright to get experience and hopefully make a difference. As Sierra observes, their work actually started close to home, advocating within ChildBright itself.
We had like a meeting with the committee where we wanted to be labeled advocates specifically. At first, the managers at ChildBright were a little iffy on that term specifically. Like they had their strong points and we had ours, and so the committee leader was kind of like mediating that for us, which was good. So then we had another separate meeting about that to really get into the details, and we ended up with the name that we desired, which was a good point for me specifically because being able to have like our voices heard directly like that, and when we weren't happy with the results that we got or the like label that we had for our group, and for us to be heard out on our disagreements there and have like that response right away was actually really good for us, because then I think having that control over something just as simple as a name is a big deal, because then that also says like, okay, for any other decisions like this or even more important ones, we will consider your opinions over the leaders of this group or whatever. So that, yeah, that was a big thing.
And for Sierra, this experience stood in stark contrast to their previous experience seeking accommodations and having their voice heard.
The surprise definitely comes from my previous experience of growing up as an autistic kid and teen, and then now young adult, and not being able to respond to things like the way a normal adult would, and really wanting to be recognized for like what specifically I would bring to the table, whether it was at my old job or at college especially. The biggest thing would be like when I would ask for accommodations and it would be very slow to actually get those, or when I would have like a very legitimate thing to bring up when things in a group weren't working out, but not feeling like I could bring them up for risk of like disturbing the peace or whatever. So having that like grievance with like just a small thing with the terms we were called and having that be addressed right away, that was a big thing for me because it's just the trouble for autistic people in general, where we have like very unique but still very valid opinions we bring up. And it's hard because our minds are just at a different wavelength than everyone else's. And so it's really hard to find that resonance with people.
Kelsey found similar validation in being recognized as someone who could navigate both disability and academic research, challenging common misconceptions.
I find having to navigate life with cerebral palsy is different on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes, certain things are not taken into consideration, like accessibility matters. In terms of research, I do think, as a disabled research as well, there's the societal standard where academia still thinks at times that having a disability and being an academic researcher are two things that one cannot do at the same time. So I get a lot of those misperceptions. So I think it's nice to have this kind of role to help show that I can do both at the same time and that these negative stereotypes are not accurate.
Megan's experience resonates with a recurring theme: the difference between having a voice and being heard. Her work with the EDI board illustrates this distinction.
Since I was a young teen, I've been a really huge advocate for a lot of like social justice issues within like First Nations communities just because of my background, because my grandmother is a survivor of residential school. So a lot of these issues are like really close to home. So like when Sierra was talking about feeling heard, I hear all the time like, oh, we need to be a voice for like First Nations people, or like we need to be a voice for like anyone. It's like, no, we have voices. We have voices that can like move mountains, and we have opinions, but it's like a lot of the times they tend to fall on deaf ears. But here at Child Bright, I find that that's not the case at all. So even just when I was working with EDI and I was like giving my opinion about some stuff, and like the person that I was on the meeting with was like genuinely like taking it into consideration, and she was not only taking it into consideration but like also expanding on it, not talking over me, but understanding what I was saying and then tying it back into stuff that I had previously said. So like showing that she was actually like listening wholeheartedly to what I was saying.
This represents a fundamental shift from traditional research approaches. As Megan explains, Indigenous research methodologies often don't align with conventional Western research frameworks.
So I think that being here for the short time that I was, you can see that it's a very different like climate to what normally I've experienced in the world, but also like in educational institution, coming from a place where like I really want to focus on Indigenous research and Indigenous research methodologies. The Western research world does not really tend to fit into the same like things. Like we don't really either A, gain knowledge like the same way, let's say for example, or B, we don't value the same knowledge the same way, or we don't think the same things are important. So it's like a lot of the times I'll be told like, oh, that's not, something that we should be studying, or that's not something that you should be like asking, that's not important to this class. But it's like for me as someone who wants to like focus in research like more through the Indigenous lens, like it is important. And I think that Child Bright really listens to the people that are experiencing what they're experiencing and really focusing what they're doing to listen to people.
When speaking as advocates, these young people face the challenge of representing broader communities while drawing from their personal experiences. Sierra reflects on this responsibility.
I know I'm just one person with autism who is like trying to explain my experience and my perspective. Like that's another label we actually talked about with the language refresh. Persons with lived experience, which is like a very big umbrella term and includes like so many different people from so many backgrounds. So knowing that I'm one of the few who is speaking about autism, I know I can speak really earnestly from my experience and be able to be 100% clear. Even if I do speak in broad terms sometimes, it's just the way I have to process things. But that's just it. The way I process things is so different from, say, my other friends with autism who will process things completely differently, and also who have very different sensory issues or even speech or physical issues. I really have to think about all my autistic friends as well when I'm speaking on behalf of them. I have a very tight friend group of about 7 to 10 of us, autistic young adults who are really trying their hardest to navigate this world. I know, like, I can speak about my own past for like ages, but also I gotta remember like speak about your friends as well and bring up what they've struggled with as a part of this conversation.
This balance between personal and community representation is something that all three navigate carefully. Kelsey approaches it by grounding their contributions in their own experience while acknowledging the broad spectrum of cerebral palsy.
I try to give examples based on my own personal experience because that's what I know, and I feel like that's the easiest way to give people an explicit example of, let's say, hey, this is why this needs to be accessible because, I can do X, Y, Z, but a lot of the times I do, as Sierra mentioned, I do try to keep in mind that in general, because CP has such a vast spectrum that people are affected differently and there's different types of severities.
Megan has developed a thoughtful approach to this challenge, knowing when to speak from experience and knowing when to direct to other voices.
The only thing I can do is share my personal experience, but I also like to very heavily bear in mind the experience of others and definitely share their experience, but not try to overshare their experience in the sense of taking words out of their mouth and like talking for them and try to say, oh, they felt this way or they felt that way, because I could never fully explain, for example, how they felt. So a lot of the times if I'm having a conversation about a certain thing that I'm not fully like involved with, or I couldn't fully resonate or relate with that someone else went through, is I'd like to direct the person to either a resource or even just to have a conversation with the person that might have experienced that, if I saw that the other person that I'm talking to had a really, big interest in whatever we're talking about. I really like people advocating for themselves if they're able to, of course, and if they're willing, like able to, meaning like it's within their schedule or whatever. I never want to overstep in a way of being that person that's like, well, I'm the one now that's doing this in this field or whatever, so I'm more important, and what I have to say about what you experienced is more important. I wouldn't like to be, spoken over. I like to say as much as I can, introducing the topic and maybe the person's struggle or whatever with the person, and then to help them better understand it in whatever way they can, either direct them to some resources that might help them, or like I said, the person themselves to speak more.
Sierra concludes with a reflection that captures something essential about this work: how what might be seen as inexperience can actually be a strength in advocating for fundamental human needs.
I can be quite naive about things still, but I try not to treat that as a weakness, but more as a strength. That kind of naivete tells me like how people should treat me in certain situations, how my requests should be taken seriously in the workplace, and also what I deserve, not just because I'm autistic or because I'm a young adult, but just because I'm a human that needs certain needs met.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this special episode with Child Bright.
As part of the Matters of Engagement Reboot 2025, we're excited to be working with research teams to help share aspects of their work. In this case, we're foregrounding voices from the Child Bright National Youth Advisory Council to better understand their experiences in contributing to research, not only as young people, but also as people with lived experience.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear how some of the issues they raised seemed not that different from challenges we've talked about in other episodes. In fact, some are quite similar. Like figuring out whether you're there to represent others or just speak from your own experience. And the difference between speaking and being heard.
Lots of similarities to what we've heard before. But I also picked up on a slightly more confident tone than I was expecting. There's a kind of certainty in their voices. They really do feel they belong in advisory spaces and that youth need to be consulted on matters that affect them. Advocacy through engagement can be a long and complex undertaking, and I'm really impressed by their fortitude and confidence.
Hopefully, we can catch up with them again and find out what they're up to.
Yeah, and until then, big thanks to Sierra, Megan, and Kelsey for participating in this episode. This episode was written and produced by Jennifer Johannesson and Emily Nicholas Engel, in collaboration with the Knowledge Mobilization Program at Child Bright. For a transcript of this episode and for more information, please visit mattersofengagement.com. To learn more about the Child Bright Network, please visit their website at child-bright.ca. That's child-bright.ca.
And if you're interested in exploring podcast ideas about your research project or community initiative, please get in touch. You can reach out to us individually or through our Matters of Engagement website.